Professor Hanoch Ben-Yami, thank you for accepting this discussion. You're teaching philosophy at the Central-European University in Budapest, and you're also heading the department there currently. We could start maybe with a few words about what you're doing currently, or maybe about your educational path. How you came to teach philosophy, how you got to work in the department in Budapest. So you started doing work on physics and mathematics in the university, and then you got to be doing philosophy. Could you say a few words about this academic path, and if it was an advantage in doing philosophy?
Okay, first, thanks for asking me to be interviewed. About my personal path into philosophy, indeed, I started in math and physics in high school. I was a strong student of math and physics, and I naturally continued to study this at the university. And during my studies at the university, I became interested in philosophy. The humanities have always been an area of interest to me, even while I was studying and concentrating on math and physics. And I was attracted by different philosophers who came my way. Nietzsche was a source of attraction at that time, for instance, as were others. I read shortly afterwards Russell's Problems of Philosophy. And
Quite a mix. Quite a mix.
Yes, absolutely. And I started to read more and more philosophy. It also affected the way I thought about physics. And I decided to study more philosophy. I was there during my army service, and I could study philosophy in the evenings, and then they let me go and study for second degree MA during this or that afternoon as well. So this is how I changed into philosophy. Initially I was attracted mainly to early modern philosophy and philosophy of mind, epistemology, and then my areas of interest widened and changed. But I can say that even today I have wider areas of specialization than many philosophers, because
then it's typically the case, yes.
I have written on philosophy of mind. I've mentioned that I've been interested in that. I've written not a little in the philosophy of language and logic. Perhaps I have some of my more important works in that area. But I've also written on philosophy of physics. This is an area where I obviously gained from my first degree in physics, as I did in my work on logic from my study of mathematics. But I've been working also on the history of philosophy, primarily on Descartes and environs, and on Wittgenstein. Yes, please.
Since you mentioned your wide interests and the fact that you were interested initially in early modern philosophy, that is an interest to which you returned in a way in your recent work, right? There is a book coming out, or it just came out, a book on Descartes, and that's your last work. Could you say a few words about your current interests and the book that is coming out?
I'll say a few words about the book which is just coming out. The book is called Descartes' Philosophical Revolution, a Reassessment. Descartes, as I'm sure many of the people watching this would know, presents his project in the Meditations, probably his best known book at present, as starting everything afresh, dismissing all former theories and finding secure foundations and building on them philosophical, scientific construction which is free of any theoretical presuppositions. Now, I think that this is not something that can be done, and I think this is not something that Descartes himself has done. contribution to philosophy and beyond, well, it tries to identify them and also to show how they were products of influences coming from the mathematics, technology, science of his age. And then I also try to show how the innovations of the meditations are actually things that Descartes infers from his developed theory and are not things to which he arrives in this alleged method free of theoretical presuppositions. If you would like, I can give one or two examples very concise.
Sure. Perhaps you could give an example about the influence of you mentioned technology, and that might be interesting for our readers. Actually, since I was your student, I remember you taking us to a museum when discussing Descartes, and we've seen an automaton there, and it was an interesting discussion about the influence of the then current technology on the way people thought about the relevant issues.
Yes, actually we are lucky to have in Budapest one of the 4 or 5 only surviving automata from the late 16th century. Mm-hmm. So this wasn't the reason I moved to Budapest. It's a lucky coincidence. The clockwork automata were a development of the 16th century, middle and late 16th century, and were a completely new invention. Nothing similar existed up to that age. And these small automata, which to us, although beautiful and interesting, seem just to be quite primitive compared to the automata with which we are familiar, these new automata were a source of amazement to the people then, because they imitated life in a way that people thought is impossible. These automata contained within themselves the source of energy that made them walk, move their head, eyes, sometimes make all sorts of sounds, and so on. And we have anecdotes from the period that document how to the people then who weren't familiar with the idea of automata, took these automata, when first seeing them, to be living things. This resembles the story of the first people watching the film of the train arriving at the, well, I forgot the name of the train station, running out
from the coming train, yes.
So this was the initial reaction of people then, and Descartes, in a way, interpreted it the other way around. Mm-hmm. He saw that phenomena similar to what was special about life, according to the then current dominant conception, these phenomena can be reproduced by means of mere mechanisms. So he inferred, let us say, that living organisms are also only automata, natural automata, created by God. And this changed the conception of the soul. The soul, which until then was considered as the principle of life, the thing which explains life, wasn't necessary any longer for the explanation of life, but was shrunk by Descartes to explain only thought. And for that reason, until Descartes, we have, let's say, the philosophy of the soul, which applies also to the explanation of life, while from Descartes on, we have this philosophy of mind. Locke already writes only about human understanding, not about human life. So this is a kind of watershed, the conception of life, soul, mind, brought about by the influence of new technology. So this is one of the things I address.
One very interesting example, but if we took a step back just for a moment and then we can move on, because you said Descartes is claiming that he's doing something to rebuild the epistemological house without any preconception, but you just mentioned an example in which there are influences, including influences you said from his previous work in math, physics, optics, and so on. So could we say that Descartes is being confused about his own project, or how would you describe?
Yes, I think that Descartes was running several projects in parallel. That's one thing. He was doing all the time empirical work into physiology, for instance, dissecting and vivisecting animals. So in this respect, he wasn't confused. He thought that he was doing something different in physiology, say. However, I think that he is not applying the method he declares to be following in the meditations. But there, he might be thinking that he's doing better work concerning the arguments that he takes from earlier philosophers and in their rigorous applications. But actually, what he takes to be more careful application, probably, is theoretical deductions from his own position of perception of life. The cogito is such a glaring example, I think, because the cogito is not due to Descartes originally, but can be found in very similar forms in Augustine's work and in other philosophers, but the oldest and most influential version when it comes to those that influence Descartes is to be found in Augustine's works. And Augustine, from the same radical doubt that tries to disbelieve everything, infers that he himself, the doubting subject, does exist and live and think. And this is very similar to Descartes' move, who knew Augustine's on the Trinity, the Trinitate, very well. But Descartes, unlike Augustine, does not infer that he lives, but only that he exists and thinks. And he does not infer that he lives, because for him, life is a mechanical phenomenon, so it's not part of this subject that is left after the process of doubt, while for Augustine, life is a property of the soul, as it is of God, who is no organism. Augustine quotes the Bible saying, because thou art a living God. This is his conception of life. So this difference is due to heavy theoretical assumptions of both thinkers, and shows how the method is not actually applied in Descartes' work.
It sounds rather like a restaging of the argument to fit the purposes that or presuppositions that Descartes already had in mind.